my life. Take a look around, everything ain't right, but everything ain't wrong. Be strong, believe me, life goes on. Come take a walk in my shoes, live my life. Take a look around, everything.
Thriving Transmen of Color is a small, grassroots nonprofit organization funded mostly by community donations and community support that provides community development programs, crisis services, and referrals to those who have been deprived of the most basic living conditions. TTMOC impacts the community lives so they can continue to flourish past racial and societal equities, to rise past the harshest circumstances of their lives. Thriving Transmen of Color current leadership is completely composed of Black and Brown trans people, but we support any individuals based on the need and current availability at the time. We encourage partnerships with other organizations and corporations who support our mission and our community. Our initiatives are to promote community volunteerism, training for the underprivileged and disadvantaged community members, overall awareness of health and wellness mentally, physically, and economically.
Everything ain't wrong. Believe me, life goes on. Hey, from an early age, I could tell I was different. Fitting with the others, tell me how, cause I've never been the type to play with dolls, where's the army men? Never kept my legs closed in dresses, they would throw me in. Had a brother close to my age, we would dress as twins. Made me feel free, like a leaf blowing in the wind.
Everyone, thank you for being here. Thank you, Mel, for putting this together. And we will start off with a question. I like to start off with, how is everybody doing today? It is Pride Month. How is everyone?
Doing good. Doing good.
Doing good.
Same here.
Hey, glad to know. So we're going to jump right in to the first question that we have is, what are your thoughts on some of the signs and symptoms of the various mental health issues you are seeing today? Anyone can go first. It doesn't matter. I can call if y'all like.
Can jump in. My response will be pretty short. I think the views that I'd like to share on it is just that I think we should keep in mind that those who are socialized female or socialized male, and if they may transition, it's important to realize that they might not really have those same signs and symptoms that, everyday clinicians would say that they need to have, For, I guess, an example, you could say something like ADHD. There are certain signs and symptoms with a male or a biological male that may be very hyperactive, and a biological female might be really quiet, and you never really know what's going on inside of them. A lot of times labels are put on them, and it might not be the best label. But I'll go ahead and let somebody else jump in on their thoughts on that as well.
I appreciate that take, because honestly, it is transitioning and seeking mental health is really good to understand the background of your client and of yourself, and make sure when you are seeking assistance that you are heard, seen. So that is actually really, really beautiful. What you said is knowing the difference when you are transitioning and the symptoms that come up. Definitely agree.
Yes. To piggyback off of what Daniel said, I think about individuals who suffer from a variety of different mental health issues, and a lot of times they tend to, especially in this medical field, like we tend to just focus on one area without even thinking about how every different symptom or sign may be influencing other things, right? So I feel that, as Daniel said, like everybody is different, and their symptoms and their signs will be different, specifically when it comes to like individuals like us who are transitioning or who identify as trans, or, it's like, instead of associating these things, disassociating with them or separating them from, and saying like, okay, for example, alcoholism. I'm not an alcoholic. I suffer from alcoholism. So this allows us to kind of just grow and deal with just that, just the symptom itself, and not attach ourselves with it. And I think that's a lot of times that's what we need. We need to stop attaching ourselves with different diagnoses and just saying like, okay, I'm dealing with this. And I feel like it makes it a lot easier for us to get a handle on our mental health in that way.
Definitely. With a background in social work, I see what you said as a biophysical social approach, where you take in all of yourself, your biological standpoints, your social aspect, and also your mental aspect, which is like you said, you suffer with alcoholism. And many people would say, well, how does that tie into what I just said? Well, the biological aspect, you could be your family, and then how you socialize with people and your mental health. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, sort of excuse me, tagging into what Ashton just said, and even Daniel touched on about diagnoses. Honestly, I say do away with diagnoses, quite frankly. The entire mental health system was created by people who don't have our best interest at heart, right? They literally pathologized slaves who wanted to escape to freedom. They pathologized that and said they were mentally ill. That being said, we all have to go through the system to get the papers, the degrees, the licenses, so that we can operate in this structure. But the structure is not for me, right? The structure is always going to want to put me inside of a box. And if I present with symptoms that don't fit inside that box, they don't consider, the holistic approach, like what Ashton is trained to do, right? Biopsychosocial. We're not just these monoliths, right? A Black trans man experiences a variety of things, as does a Black trans woman. Everyone in this group, we have similar experiences, and we have very, very different experiences as well. So there's no one way to be trans. There's no one way to be Black. The mental health system that exists in our society seeks to pathologize things, right? So you have a coping mechanism. It might be unhealthy. It still helps you get through this difficult time period. When those stressors are alleviated and you're still doing relying on those same coping mechanisms, some people realize it's not helping anymore and they're able to stop. Some people, on the other hand, can't. And so that's where we come in. We'll help you make whatever changes it is that you want to make, right? Of course, people have to be willing to work with the therapist. It's not just like going to therapy and like complaining about your life, though some people think that. But so my thoughts about mental health symptoms, we're all experiencing stuff, and it's always going to look different no matter who you are. Taking into account the whole individual, there's no telling why someone is on a corner singing. They might have like got the Holy Ghost, right? And they're just feeling that song. They might have a mental illness. That might literally be what they need to do to expend some energy so they can go on with the rest of their day. We won't ever know if we don't talk to them. So I say get rid of the formalized diagnoses. I know we need them, but I think far too much significance is placed on them. So
Definitely say that. Because sometimes the signs and symptoms look like stereotypes versus actual assistance to seeking help. Like you mentioned, the lens in which the DSM-5 and many of these symptoms were based on is from a cis white male lens who's potentially probably homophobic in that way too. So then it comes on with another layer that people, Black and brown people and trans people, have to fight through to have a voice and self-advocate in a place where they're seeking help, where they're looking for assistance. That leads me straight into the next question is, do you all think the symptoms and signs look different in Black and brown community, especially within the trans community? I know Michael touched on this, what you were saying, but if you would like to start first, because I believe you were already kind of in that corner.
sure, I absolutely do think, trans people are, to speak in generalizations, like we will present with a lot of similar symptoms, especially if we come from similar backgrounds. So a lot of the people I see come from low socioeconomic status, which, will impact the stuff that they have access to in childhood. And it's also a great predictor of the socioeconomic status that you will be in as an adult. So if I'm working with all my clients who are from a low SES, they're going to already have a lot of common symptoms. Of course, it's going to look slightly different for each of them, but they might all have some form of depression. How that depression shows is another thing. So depression in cisgender Black women can oftentimes go unnoticed as a bad attitude. So you've got a Black woman who y'all know the struggle that Black women deal with. Our moms, our wives, our sisters, they've got like the weight of the world on their shoulders, right? And they don't really have an outlet. Of course, I'm speaking in generalizations, but they don't have an outlet. How does that come across? An attitude, high anxiety, depression. Depression for everyone doesn't look like I can't get out of bed. It doesn't look like a lack of productivity. Some people still experience that depression, but instead it comes across as a bad attitude or forgetfulness even. So things show up differently for all of us, and without a more complete picture, you can't even begin to narrow down what their actual issue is.
Definitely. Seeing what as a Black, seeing where they come from history-wise, their family, and where they come from as Black and brown people. Black people are known to be descendants of slavery, taking that into consideration and how they were upbringing, like you mentioned. Definitely people can turn around and see it as a bad attitude just because their background was different, didn't have that trauma effect that happened years to their family and things like that. Definitely.
Yeah. And I want to say, like, even when you break down that question, right? And you say, do you think the symptoms and signs look different in the Black and brown community? I would have to say just definitely, because look at our community in general. Our communities look different, period. When we talk about just the surrounding areas, it's like I live in Atlanta. So, a lot of the Black communities are now being regentrified, and they're just changing how it looks, but it's not even silently anymore. They're pushing us out. They're taking our culture away. So now culturally we are homeless. Physically we are homeless. So it's going to look different for us. And because it looks different, we have to change the way that we look for our support. We're not in the books. And if we are in the books, as Michael said, it is basically underprivileged, underserved. And it's like, our community doesn't always look like that neither, but if it does, so then that means how we look for support has to be different. We don't necessarily have to sit on somebody's couch and have these discussions. Sometimes it is as simple as going to our chosen family and having these discussions and getting the support that we need. So of course it's going to look different for us because they're not coming into our communities and actually getting a realistic view of what it is we need, what it is we desire. How can we be better supported? So it's going to look, and then even to expand on that in the trans community, I know for myself, seeing organizations like the Thriving Trans Men of Color, like we need this space for Black, or not even Black, but BIPOC trans individuals to have the support because it looks different for us. You know what I'm saying? So I think, like Michael was saying, like, yes, it does look different. And because it looks different, we have to go about it differently, getting the support we need.
Definitely. I see that coming up. I see how the Black community, Black and brown community, our goals do not necessarily look like the white community or the American society goals. So when oftentimes Black and brown people are going up to seek help, assistance is grants or getting funding, it's constantly meet my goal, but that's not even the Black and brown community's goals. Neither the trans community is not there. So then it's a lack of help. And then, like you said, people end up homeless because they believe, other people believe you should be here when that's not even their goal. And I've been to Atlanta. They are gentrifying. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. It was so many. I was on the Beltline. I was like, man, what's going on around here? It was a lot of gentrification.
One other thing that I would just like to add to what everyone said is just once you throw religion into the mix, things go a whole nother way when it comes to signs and symptoms, especially with minorities, because those that are religious, church is something that is a very, very big focal point in their life. And oftentimes in church, people might be told to, you don't necessarily need therapy. You can talk to the pastor, or you just need God, which is great. That is great. But as a lot of t-shirts say, and a lot of people say, you can have God and a therapist, So I think oftentimes with minorities, a lot of those signs and symptoms, people can't even really name what they're feeling because they're so used to having it shut down and just ignored. One of the things that a lot of us might have heard when we were younger was, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry for. And if that is how you're socialized from a young age, by the time you're in your teens, by the time you're in your 20s, 30s, you're just so used to suppressing everything that you don't even recognize the signs and symptoms.
Definitely. That leads straight to the next question. Why do you think communities of colors choose not to seek support from mental health providers?
And like Daniel said, it's instilled in us, it's ingrained in us. In the community, church is our beacon of hope. But the twofold of that is we're constantly looking outside of ourselves. And I'm not against, spirituality, religion, or anything of that nature, because I am spiritual and religious, but we're constantly searching outside of ourselves. We're taught to look outside. What happens in the family stays in the family. We're not going to talk about this. And it's like, no, we need to talk about it. No, we need to change that narrative around that. So it's just kind of ingrained and instilled from slavery. Turn this way, do this, do that. And it's like, nope, let's stop doing those things and let's do it differently. And I think that's why it's just generations of generational habits and patterns that we probably don't have the courage to change, don't have the knowledge to change, or just don't have the willpower because we're always met with a wall or met, with opposing factors. And I think that's why.
Definitely say that. Breaking that generational cycle that you mentioned, the habits. Yes.
Absolutely, Ashton. It is terrifying to change, right? It is absolutely terrifying to change. So it is so courageous to even reach out to someone to be a confidant, a therapist, a pastor, a best friend. It is so courageous to even do that part. And so you have to build up the courage to reach out and ask for help, right? Then you have to hope that you don't sort of rescind I need help. And then, oh, well, no, I'm all right. You don't know how many people reach out to me like, hey, I got a lot going on. I want to see if I can get on your schedule. And then between the 24 hours it takes for me to get back to them, they're like, oh, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Everything's all right, And it's like, well, thanks for reaching out. I know it took a lot. I know it took a lot for you to reach out to me. And if you ever change your mind, shoot me an email or give me a call. Because we were taught to suppress generation after generation. And just like the brother said, we got to stop doing that. We are human beings capable of the full range of emotions. And we need to recognize that. None of the people I work with can tell me on a consistent basis what they're feeling in any given moment. And so that's some of the groundwork that I lay. Understanding your own emotions. how was your day? Oh, it was good. And then they tell me like these terrible stories. I'm like, you sure you had a good day? Like, that sounds tough. And so it's like just trying to understand, make those connections. This is what I'm feeling. It's okay to feel that. It's unpleasant, but it's okay to feel this. And this too shall pass. Having a great day, great emotions, and this too shall pass. So people don't know what they're feeling. And so they can't explain that. So, and we're not like talking to each other to sort of compare notes. Hey, I had a terrible day. How was your day? My day was terrible too. And that exchange of information is really important, because not to normalize your experience, but almost to normalize it. So for trans people who are going through a transition and they're feeling a bit in this androgynous phase, I remember when I was there, I would ask my wife, which bathroom do I go into today? Because I don't want the mess with anybody. And so like she would legit help me be like, this one. And I would take her word for it, right? So somebody who is not trans or transitioning, they certainly won't understand that. And sometimes it can be, trans men especially can subscribe to toxic masculinity and be like, well, I don't talk about feelings. You know, that's like some girl stuff. Like, I'm straight, I'm chilling, I'm holding it down. And it's like, bro, I can see how much pain you are in because you don't even want to admit that you have feelings, that you have emotions, and that you have experienced something that's not sitting right with you. It's okay to talk about that stuff. It's so needed to talk about that. So
Definitely. But what you said, I do have a question on what you said, because to me it sounded like as transitioning, you reestablish those boundaries for yourself. So, what are some things that you mentioned already? Some boundaries that come up? Are there any more boundaries that you believe you had to reestablish for yourself during your transition, and probably even now as you're even growing in this world?
all sorts of boundaries, quite frankly. So like beginning of transitioning and just trying to figure out what name I'm gonna have and then how to introduce that to people. And I spent way more time thinking about how other people would feel with a name than how I felt a name would fit me. So like I definitely thought way more about other people's feelings when it came to me picking my new legal name. I thought about, honestly, I sought external validation for everything. Is this haircut masculine enough? Of course, it's not an issue now. You know, I've been on testosterone for over 15 years and I've lost a great deal of hair. But I kind of take that as a new badge of honor, because what's more masculine than losing your hair? I mean, it goes with the territory, for me at least. So other boundaries I had to set with family, that was like super traumatizing. And I was estranged from my family of origin for several years. No form of communication whatsoever. And it was in direct response to me having a very adult conversation with my mother, telling her, I am transitioning. This is what this means. Do you want to continue to see me in your life? That's literally what I said. I can replay that conversation over and over as though it happened yesterday. And based on her response and her actions that followed, I was like, okay, well, every time I'm around my family, I feel terrible afterwards. I don't like this feeling. I need to continue to take care of myself. This is so painful, but I have to cut my family off because every time I leave them, I feel terrible about myself. And so I did that. And it was so excruciatingly painful because I was taught family is all you got. Nobody else is going to have your back but your family. Blood is thicker than water, all that kind of stuff. And I found out that was all a lie. It was all a lie. My friends became my family. My partner became my family. My dog became my family, you know? And I built these ties with people because, one, I was willing to be vulnerable enough to form bonds with people after I figured that I could trust them. And that helped sustain me, that helped me grow. And when I learned that if I told people what my boundaries were and they respected it, those were people that I wanted to keep around in my life. Conversely, if I shared boundaries with someone and they decided they were going to consistently try to push my boundaries, that became a red flag for me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know where to place you. Like, you've got your own category and people I don't F with, and you sit over here. And so it's just kind of like learning to maneuver, learning to how to be a man, honestly. Like, that was a little tough. And because I didn't feel secure enough to have talks with my other trans mask friends to be like, hey, do you think this is dumb? Or I don't want to come across like too girly if I do this or that. I didn't have those kinds of conversations. So I 100% subscribe to toxic masculinity in a sense of don't show emotions because I think that's weakness. Like, this has been a very long journey. The person I am today is so different from the person I was 8 years ago. And honestly, part of that is because I've been in therapy doing work on myself. But then, of course, I went to grad school, got a degree, learned way more. And life is just kind of a series of sharing your boundaries with people, see how they take to them, and adjusting accordingly. And that's for any population that you're a part of.
Definitely. I appreciate you for sharing that in your background and your story, because I believe that is a key to establishing mental health providers, like establishing yourself with mental health providers is establishing boundaries with yourself and the mental health provider. Like, hey, I don't like this, especially if people of color. I believe our boundaries have been pushed so much we never even realize that we need to establish these boundaries here, even when we are seeking help. So I appreciate that, because definitely.
One more thing that I'd like to add to that, with Michael pointing out boundaries, that has a lot to do with why I went into the mental health field. Like, I think a lot of community, like individuals of color, especially trans individuals, we can't find support. Not really, like, just by looking. You don't really see often, Black trans therapists, not those that are out and open. So we kind of feel like there's no one that looks like us. There's no one with similar experience. And then on top of that, you add in, a lot of people, there's a financial disparity. Counseling is expensive. It is. It sucks. It's really expensive. There's ways to get it cheaper, but then that goes back to, the lack of knowledge that a lot of people within the community of color have. So I think all around, it's like, once we start figuring out what our boundaries are and we start to kind of list, okay, I need this, this, and this, I'm going to go find it because I deserve it, then, you're good.
Definitely.
And I was going to say, like, when it comes to boundaries, like what Michael was saying and what Daniel was saying, like, for me, I had to learn boundaries of myself, like specifically for myself, because a lot of us, especially in the trans community, at one point in time, we were big people pleasers. Like, I hear that a lot. I see that a lot, especially with clients. Like, they're people pleasing to be accepted, to be loved, to be in fellowship and community. And it was like, I had to set that boundary for myself to say, all right, I get to do it differently. I get to do it my way. And that's the blessing that I always take from being a trans man. I get to do it my way, unapologetically. So I had to set boundaries for myself to say, hey, I don't like the way you make me feel. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to be a part of that. And like Michael was saying, that includes family, specifically family, because like you said, we've been taught that family is everything. And family can really hurt you the most, So it was like, yeah, I believe that in this process of being trans, like setting boundaries within yourself so that you can continue to support yourself.
I totally agree. Hearing both of you, what you just said, Ashley, and what Michael mentioned about establishing those boundaries with your family. I believe sometimes when you go to ask for help, you feel like since you already crossed the boundary of saying, hey, I'm trans, I'm transitioning, asking for much more seems like maybe I'm just doing too much now. But it's establishing saying, hey, I'm not. I'm still alive. I still need to eat. I still need to breathe. I like to love. It's just reestablishing those boundaries can still be there, even though you said, hey, I am trans. So 100%. I agree with everything all three of y'all said, because it speaks to my core right now. With that being said, as y'all are in the profession of mental health, have y'all experienced any kind of oppression or backlash or pushback as y'all entered this field?
I have to say that I think I get more pushback or I get more reservation from clients. Like, so, I can be found on like Psychology Today, and I'm very open and honest. Like, I start my statement like I am a Black trans man. But I guess like a lot of clients don't really read the bios, so they just see my picture and they just say, okay, this is Black man. And then when they have this one-on-one, my consultations, and I tell them who I am, it's like you see their demeanor change. Like, oh, yeah, I don't think you're the right supporter. I don't think you're the right therapist for me. I respect that. That's absolutely fine, because that is the purpose of these consultations, to see if we're going to judge well with each other. But I do find it surprising, because it's like, out of this whole conversation, you here with me and we rocking out. And then the moment I tell you that I'm trans, now all of a sudden everything changes. You have even overlooked the fact that I've met you with love. I've met you with unbiases. I've met you with non-judgment. And then you judge me off of what? So I don't take it offensively, because you've missed the support that you're missing the love that I was willing to give you, that I'm able to give you. But I think for me, that is like, it's a slap in my face. It is upsetting, but that's like the only oppressive space that I've felt. And it's like, once I tell the client that I'm trans and they're like, oh, yeah, you might not be it for me. Okay, that's fine. But what made it different from then to now? Oh, the fact that I'm trans. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you for still being in the field, because like you said, it does feel like a slap in the face. And I know the Bible says turn the other cheek, but it still stings. It still has that bite, that sting effect. So yeah, I do appreciate you for still going out there and being as open as you are, because being trans does not exclude you from being able to connect with people, even though some people have it in them that it does. It really doesn't. Like you said, it's just one thing. We still eat, we still breathe, we still speak. Still here, still sane people. Just say, hey, this is the label that we put on ourselves, so I can understand myself, and so can everybody else.
Most of the oppression that I experience in my field has been race-based, and mostly in the form of microaggressions. Excuse me. So like, you speak so well to be Black. What? Still don't know how to take that. It's just like, well, I speak English. So yeah, I went to elementary school and high school, and they teach us the fundamentals there. So I just kind of stuck with that. And this is what I've got. Yeah. Or people wanting to consult with on a client that they might have who happens to be Black, and they share a bit of their personal feelings about this client with me, and it's like, did you remember that I'm Black too, right? Like, you can't be saying this stuff and not expect me to like say something about it. Like, I'm very sensitive to things that affect the Black community, especially. So anytime a white person says something that in my mind is sort of off color for a white person to say, especially, I tell them. Case in point, someone's consulting about a client. The client is a Black kid, not really helping the therapeutic process work, doing a lot of fighting back. And the therapist, who happens to be white, says, I wish I could just like put a collar around their neck and just like shock them to get them to start thinking right. And I was like so taken aback. I'm like, huh? I'm like, that's not okay to say. Like, I know we're colleagues and you're expressing frustration, but it's not okay to say that, especially because I'm Black and the client is Black. And I know you would never say a racist comment like that. So you know, clearly you weren't thinking of it in that sense, but just to let you know, comments like this are not okay. And I'm just like, you're supposed to be one of the okay people. Like, how do you think it's okay to even say that to another clinician, let alone a Black clinician, about a Black client? Like, that's not okay.
It's not. I think people get open and understanding confused with I don't have boundaries, and it's just not true. Or I'm not thinking. I'm just open and understanding, and I'm not about to be quick to beat you up or beat you on your point. I would like to help you. I'm coming to assist. I'm not always here to fight you. But what you did say was backwards. What you did say was messed up, and some people don't know, they have their lack of boundaries and think they can cross each other people's, and it's just not true. Because like you said, it's still a racial comment. That means that there's a boundary there. There's a fence there that says, hey, you should read this precaution. There's guidelines here. There's instructions before you cross, before you move. There's instructions here. Please heed those instructions, no matter how open and understanding someone is. Please. Because it does create like you said, it may be my colleague, but it still creates tension within the work environment and anywhere else. This is not their home. This is still here.
I think within the space of being a mental health advocate, I've been pretty lucky, definitely blessed that, you know, being a trans person of color, I use that as a selling point regarding like any place that I've wanted to work, any type of clientele. It's like that is always the first thing. That's what you're going to hear first. Before you hear about my background, anything else, it's all good. That's going to be what it is. I think the spaces that I've had more oppression with was probably when I was living in a female body. Because I come from a background of wanting to, like, I did a lot of work in health and fitness, ran a gym for a while. And when you're like 125, a pretty, you know, petite female body, you don't get that respect, you know? And then add, you know, being a Black body was not respected. So I find myself, I had to do a lot of work after my transition of going back and processing that, because I was like, how far could I have gotten had I been in a male body? You know, but I think we all kind of definitely have the oppression one way or the other, even if it's just microaggressions. You know, we're gonna feel it sometimes.
Yeah, I feel what you said is when you said maybe if I was born cis, where would I be now? And I totally see that and feel that because oftentimes I question that myself. If I was cis, assuming or not even just assuming cis from the beginning, would I have this viewpoint? Would I have this perspective? Would I have these emotions put on me? And it does, especially working in the mental health field and working through those things as you're talking to people. Have y'all mentioned people have come at y'all because y'all are trans, because you are Black, and coming against that on yourselves daily is it's a constant thing, and to be oppressed as well as go along. I feel like I'm rambling here because it's just so many emotions that come into it on a daily basis. Which brings me to, if y'all were to ever interact, how would you talk to someone and assist them in helping someone who's having a mental health crisis? As I mentioned, when it comes to all these the things going on around us, how would you tell someone, hey, this is how you can interact with someone?
I think the advice that I would give anyone, just like they tell everyone that, you know, learning CPR is beneficial. Learning just basic mental health first aid can be beneficial. There's actually a website that you can go to. It's mental health first aid. I believe it's .org. But you learn the basics, you know, that way you can help your friends, because a lot of people will tell you just call 911. Sometimes that's not the best idea, especially for a Black body or any body of color. So just finding a way, doing some Google searches, seeing what's available in your community for like just free basic, you know, here's like a 101 of signs and symptoms of mental health, and this is what you can do to help your friends. I think that would be beneficial for anyone to take advantage of and learn.
Yes.
Absolutely. Understanding some of the basics of mental health first aid would be beneficial for everyone, to be honest with you. And there are lots of resources out there that will sort of teach you the 101 of how to help somebody in a crisis. But there are national phone lines. There are local crisis numbers that you can call, and local like crisis response teams. So no matter where you live, there's something. It might not be very conveniently located, but there's something at least in every major city. Um, whether I know here, I live in Tallahassee, we have a crisis response team. It's mobile. I don't know what the response time is like. I've never had to use it, but the idea is that they send trained people to come out to you and sort of assess the situation, try to calm the person down. I'm sorry if y'all hear my dog in the background, but trying to calm the person down, and then they take it from there. But I don't recommend calling the police unless the person is physically violent. Just to, yeah, I don't recommend calling the police for mental health issues.
Yeah, like Michael said, and he pretty much said it perfectly. Like just reaching out to these resources. There are resources. I hear a lot of times like, oh, there aren't any resources. There are resources, and there is enough resources to hold you over until you find something that's specifically for you that you mesh well with. You know, in this space, even if it's limited, take what you can, get what you need out of it for the moment to hold you over until you're able to get what you need. So that is reaching out to these hotlines and other nonprofit organizations. You just have to do a little bit of work to find them, but they are there. And that's what they're here for.
Definitely. What I hear from all of y'all is to be an ally and an advocate is to research, because that was one of the things that helped me stay connected with my family, is that they would tell me I searched this stuff. Like my grandma is 84 and she told me that she asked Alexa what the things I've been telling her, such as me being non-binary, gender fluid, she's looking up these things. She says she's asking Alexa. So I'm like, yes, that helps me feel connected and stay connected with my family. My mom says the same thing. I'm researching. I want to learn. So definitely look those things up. So when someone does bring these things up, it's not just over what I have heard from other people around me. I've researched this and gained knowledge for myself, because there's a shift going on. When people are transitioning, and I would say it's a big shift, but as thriving trans men of color, that's exactly what it is. It's thriving. You go from being a seed to thriving. You're growing. You're pushing through that ground. You're bursting the seams. So you're going to feel that shift, and so is everyone around you. So I do appreciate y'all for coming out today and sharing y'all's knowledge and being who y'all are in this world, because it's much needed. And I do love y'all guys. I just met y'all, but I do love y'all. Just hearing y'all, hearing the things that y'all are saying, I'm like, yes, because it's exactly where I'm at right now in my mind. So it's very good to hear this from other people. So I appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much for tuning in to TTMOC Mental Health Awareness Panel. It's been a great experience and an honor having this panel here in this conversation. Be sure to check out Thrive Marathon Empowerment Sessions, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Sunday, every week. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under thrivingtransmenofcolor. Check us out on Twitter under the official TTMOC. And check us out on any social media platforms near you. It's been a pleasure. I am Mel Howard. I am the Executive Director of Thriving Trans Men of Color, and we appreciate the community. We appreciate the providers that came tonight to have the conversation, and we appreciate you for existing. Continue to thrive.
Playing ball with me and I was better than 65% of the court, they would never win. I'm not a guy, I don't have the money, or I would try to leave my city and travel the world so I can buy the missing pieces. the puzzle pieces I call my life. So incomplete, no one understands, so don't ask me why. Suicide is a stormy side, but we often try. I'm too scared to fail, so I stay on this earth and hope to